Let me show you something. I love math, y'all. I love to do math. I also love learning what math does. Check it though, math can be a little strange. Its oddities sometimes confuse and irritate me. One such oddity is math's exclusive, alienating, almost elitist terminology, language, discourse, and personality, and math's equally exclusive teaching style. It gives off an ill vibe. The math is often put on the top shelf, and students are told, hey, go get it if you can. Now, what is math? In simple words, math is a science that explores the logic of shape, quantity, and arrangement. It's the study of patterns, y'all. Arithmetic studies patterns of numbers. Algebra studies patterns of variables. Geometry studies patterns of shape. And logic, maybe. Statistics studies patterns of data. Calculus studies patterns of change. Topology studies patterns of position. You feel me? I'm sharing a summary of a book that I read that has an intimidating title, right? Intimidating. It's called A Pathway to Equitable Math Instruction, Dismantling Racism in Mathematics Instruction. Once you get past the title, though, it's a useful book for self-reflection on my teaching biases. It's been very helpful to me. It's hard to get past that title, though. That title exposes everything that might follow that is good and useful to scrutiny and debate. Now, I'm going to share the meat of the book with you here. Get past the title, right? The title is asking to be scrutinized and debated. The characteristics described here are great. They're solid, but they sound mathy, if that's a word. The words are exclusive, fancy, esoteric. That means difficult to understand. So sorry for using a word that was difficult to understand. That means difficult to understand. And they hide simple, wonderful ideas. So this is my takeaway from the book. This is the most important page in the book. And I said, okay, I want to edit these ideas using everyday language that I can display in my classroom like posters to remind, rally, and motivate teachers and students, especially this teacher who is the foremost student in each of his classes. Now let's see how I did. By seeing whether I can decipher and explain my edits now. All right. When I look at this one, it reminds me to engage students by showing them a diversity of problem-solving examples and a diversity of problem-solving people. Reminds me that I should show them how the rule of 72 says that a $1,000 investment that pays 18% interest yearly will double to $2,000 in 4 years, because 72 divided by 4 is 18. This one says I should also tell them about how Paulo Freire developed an approach that could help large groups of people learn to read and write rapidly. Now the rule of 72 example, that one's mathy, which works well in a math class, right? You want to show them what math does. The second one, though, is not mathy at all, but simple math can quantify the impact of Freire's work, which might bring it home a little better for some students. Watch this. He, Paolo, taught 300 workers to read and write in 45 days. At that rate, he could teach 2,400 workers to read in 1 year, because 1 year is 365 days. 45 doesn't divide equally into 360, but it divides about 8 times. 45 times 8 is 360. So if Paolo can train 300 workers in 45 days, he can train about 8 times as many in 365 days. That's 2,400. Simple math. And it's okay to keep the math simple. Math people. It's okay. It's also okay to show students, problem solvers, who didn't use quantitative analysis or calculators to solve their problems. They're solving problems of our existing state. They're solving the problems of people. But we can use simple numbers to quantify the impact of their solution. Let's move on. All right, build strength. This one says generate mental muscle through cross-training. That's working on problems that sometimes look like the math to which we are accustomed. Then sometimes looking at problems where the math might be subtle, like in Paulo Freire's example, or even non-existent. It says to create a culture that views mistakes as opportunities for correction and learning. It says that muscles are built via resistance. So in weightlifting, right, the resistance is provided by the weights and gravity. When I'm doing push-ups, the resistance is provided by my body weight. In math, resistance is provided by not knowing the answer, but it is also provided by not knowing the approach that yields the answer. Now, the latter resistance encourages us to value the approach more than the answer, the journey more than the destination. Hit me. All right, this one says, work to resolve disparities and gaps by not mentioning them so much. Because y'all, where the focus goes, that's where the power flows. So instead, invest that time and energy into showing ways that learning can be applied to earn money. Show how serving others allows you to become aware of their problems and solutions to those problems before others see the problem, and how these solutions become enterprises, which can then become careers that may never feel like jobs. Hit me. All right. Let's say that students focus on mastering reading, writing, and counting while they're in school. Let's say for the sake of saying. Then let's suppose that their later years are focused on mastering leading, creating, and thinking. Being able to see, say, and show helps students transition from reading, writing, and counting in school to leading, creating, and thinking out there in the real world. See means understand your views. Not just what your eyes see, right? But what you think about what you see via the tools of analysis, synthesis, and visualization. Say means to express or articulate your views using skills of language and discourse. That's extended speech. In that's extended expression in speech or writing. Show means see and say to others via tools like problem solving and stand-up storytelling. Now this approach is the ace up my sleeve. I first experimented with delivering the CSA show as a 10 to 15 minute stand-up storytelling class monologue where I featured everyday problem solving like improving home internet access during the pandemic. Stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Now I have since broadened its scope to include any combinations of my Learning Lab course content. And we'll talk through that content later, but the story of how a song like All for One, our family anthem, came together is a great example. I use it here. I have a young cousin who is the granddaughter of an uncle who founded our family club and served as its first president back in the 80s. Our grandmother recently called us together right before her birthday this year and asked us to resurrect the family club and to restore a spirit of peace, love, and happiness in our family. My uncle's granddaughter stood up at the end of this meeting where our grandmother called us together and sang this freestyle song in this odd, beautiful key that sounded like my uncle speaking to us from heaven. An aunt who presided over the meeting asked me if I could help my cousin turn her freestyle verse into a song. I said, yeah, I think I could help with that. We met the next week, me and my cousin. I wrote the chorus and verses the week after that. We recorded our parts on iPhones, singing in the shower, and texted them to each other. I mixed it at my studio, and presto, now we have a family song. Now this is a true story that I told in a couple of minutes, if it took that long. But I hope that you could see what I was saying and that I showed you what we did and how we did it in simple, illustrative words. Now, if you get that, then you get the CSA show. Hit me. My personal awakening set me on a pathway to power and purpose. That pathway was paved with ministry, that's serving people, and entrepreneurship, that's presenting solutions to the marketplace. Ministry and entrepreneurship, they're linked. They're inextricably linked. Ministry is serving people. Serving people allows you to become aware of their problems and discover solutions to those problems before others see the problem. These solutions become entrepreneurial enterprises that we can present to the marketplace. The pathway to power and purpose is also paved with language. That's how we use words. Not just what the words mean, but how we use them, how well we use them. Literacy is the ability to read, write, and nowadays compute. Use a computer as something more than a typewriter. Numeracy, well, that's skill with numbers. That's using the brain to compute. Self-confidence, that's feeling good about you. Self-identity, that's how you see you. Selah.